Thanks everybody for being here on a wacky Cleveland State Day. I don't know what's crazier, the weather or the Rhodes Tower being closed because of flooding. Is that nuts? I don't know. It's sort of like, where is everyone is the big thing. But but listen, we appreciate everyone being here for the fifth of our six speakers, Dr. Mark Chupp from Case Western Reserve University. And we're also privileged to have with us Mayor Gary Norton, the mayor of East Cleveland, who is with us, and we'll be joining Mark in sharing. You know, our previous speaker, Gary Morass, sort of gave a big picture of looking externally in the role of university. We're going to look now at sort of at the micro level, how partnerships happen in ways that align with democratic, reciprocal, mutually beneficial, peer-related ways of engaging with the community, where a lot of thinking and a lot of work in this area has gone, as we heard from our previous speakers. So how do you execute that on the ground? Mark Chupp has had experience at that in a number of fronts, literally all over the world, and in consulting with universities and other institutions all over the country. But perhaps the most important work comes from his ties here in the Cleveland area, certainly at the Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences, and the work he does there as an associate professor. He directs the East Cleveland Partnership there and has done work in a number of neighborhoods, including Central, on engaging faculty and students in these democratic ways with residents on the ground. But beyond that, he's very active in his local community, a proud resident and active citizen of Cleveland Heights, very active in his local church community, and a host of other ways that he makes this real. I've worked with Mark, had a chance to work with him in Cincinnati on a project that we worked on together involving residents in local neighborhoods. And so we're really privileged to hear from him, and to hear from him about how you execute this in our local community. So with that, Mark Chupp. And I also should say Mark is fresh from a vacation in Costa Rica. Yeah, got in late last night, so give him a little, if he nods off, you know why.
Yeah, I actually got to be on vacation. I lived in Costa Rica for 3.5 years, so it was great to get back there and spend time. So made it hard to come back. And this is a busy day, making the transition. I'm also, as Byron mentioned, I'm busy in my own community. And Cleveland Heights is having, just a little promo here, is having a very important annual meeting tonight, and it's the 5th anniversary of the Heights Observer. And we've brought in Peter Pula, a friend of mine also, who is the founder of something called Axiom News in Canada. And it does a lot of work in the United States, does a lot of work in Cincinnati. And the annual meeting is around generative journalism, taking a constructive and appreciative approach to journalism, being influenced in part by appreciative inquiry. And then tomorrow there's a workshop for journalists that Peter's going to lead about how to do this kind of investigative journalism. He argues that investigative journalism is important and it shouldn't be undermined in any way. But what we need to be doing is investigating from a strengths perspective rather than looking for all the negative that we see in the media. So I think it's a great opportunity. So 6 o'clock tonight at the Community Center in Cleveland Heights, and then tomorrow morning. So we're here today to talk a little bit about the community engagement models and some of the experiences we've had. I'm going to talk a little bit from an academic perspective and from a journal article we wrote for the Journal of Community Practice, my colleague and I, Mark Joseph. But we're also mainly going to talk from an experiential view of how we've been doing this. And having worked for the Levin College of Urban Affairs and with Phil Starr, and Dennis Keating for 8 years. We did a lot of that work here, and so I'm going to share some of my learnings from that, and then specifically about some of the work we've been doing with CSU, particularly the Levin College, in building this East Cleveland partnership. And then we'll talk a little bit more about that service learning project we did that kind of was the signature initiative on vacant housing. And then we're going to ask the Honorable Mayor Gary Norton Jr. to give his comments and his response. And then we're actually going to kind of take it to the backside of the story and about what we've learned as a result of this process and some of the harder experiences. And during your table conversations, we encourage you to generate questions where we can even go a deeper level. And with the mayor's permission, we may even tell a few stories that shed light on at least some of my shortcomings and him confronting me on that. So
it's fine to talk about your shortcomings.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I just set the parameter straight. So it's an election year, right, Mayor? So that's what we're going to do. Sorry, I didn't bring my clicker. So I think about 4 different kinds of approaches to community engagement, and one of those being the whole notion that we at Case Western Reserve University are known for, right? We have millions of dollars of research going into applied research, where our, some of our faculty, particularly in medical school, talk about doing community research when what that really often means is doing research on, and their subjects come from the community, doing health-related research. And some of the shortcomings of that is it does expand knowledge in the field, but it has little direct impact on those who are being researched. A second model then is this expert-client model, and where we contract and do work that has some mutual benefit, but I would say there's some limitations as well as that, because as soon as the money stops, the work stops often, right? The contract's over, and so now it's time to move on to another contract. And it puts the university in the expert position. And then we often think about community engagement in terms of service learning. And I'm going to distinguish, if we have time at the end, I'll show you some of the review of the literature about service learning if we want to go into that. But the traditional service learning, I think, too often focuses on enhancing the student's education by getting them out of the classroom, without thinking about what's the role of the community. What impact does that have on the community? And I'm going to be very honest today. So one of our community partners from McGregor Senior Center called me one day and said, when we were early on in this process, he said, "I've gotten 5 emails or calls this week, all asking for an interview with me from your students. Couldn't you get this a little bit more organized?" And and it was right. He was right. And so we were early in this process. We had 5 sections doing community assessments, and lo and behold, a bunch of them wanted to interview him, even though they weren't given the topic of seniors necessarily. So we didn't have it very well coordinated. And so it was enhancing the students' learning, but it was not necessarily beneficial to the partner. In fact, it was a burden in that case. So that's some of the limitations with the traditional service learning. What we are trying to build, and we are in the very infancy of this, is something we're calling engaged scholarship based on authentic relationships and a transformed academy. And I think those are 2 important words that we can unpack, and they come from the literature and some articles, really about what it means to be have authentic relationships. And I would say that to have a peer-to-peer relationship takes time, and we're going to talk about that. But we're beginning to get there. So those are some of the things we're trying to move toward. So why East Cleveland? Well, it's our neighbor, and with a history of connectedness, and there's a tremendous amount of need and a tremendous amount of potential. As we know, there's a long history of involvement between East Cleveland and University Circle that then went away with a whole series of things, starting with white flight, and a number of other disinvestment that occurred over time. And there's also limited internal capacity. And so when I came there, we began saying, what can we do? When I came to Case 6.5 years ago, said, what can we do to be more engaged as a school? And so East Cleveland was the first on my list. there was a new window of opportunities as well. The first one is sitting right here. Mayor Norton coming into office, and so Norm Krumholtz from the College of Urban Affairs, and I think Ned Hill was in that first meeting. I'm not sure if Dennis was there, but we met at MSAS.
Cat is a good-looking guy.
Yeah. So we, that's part of that peer-to-peer relationship. So, yeah. I put pictures up of him. He says good things about me. Right. No. So the mayor's interest, his background, and just by way of a biography, I'll just say this right now because it fits while I'm talking about him. He has a degree from political science from here, as well as a master's in public administration from the College of Urban Affairs. So he's a CSU alum. He worked for
Lots of people.
I want to say councilman, but they weren't called councilmen. County Commissioner Peter Lawson Jones, and then was Barbara Bird Bennett, CEO of schools, and then he also was the president of East Cleveland City Council, and then became the mayor of East Cleveland. So he has a great background in public administration. And so that was a great opportunity. He brought that academic experience and knowledge, he brought professional experience, and he brought a vision. And so we were very excited about that. There was also the federal stimulus funds with the Neighborhood Stabilization Program that was going to bring in potentially resources, as well as the Cuyahoga County Land Bank. And the other two things I think should not be short-sighted, and that is, we did that pilot project with our classes, and our students, they were supposed to give an advocacy speech at the end of the semester. And I remember this as clear as yesterday. One of our students said, you know, in the advocacy speech, she directed it at the school and at the university. And she said, you have us going out there and learning about the community, but what has this school done to bring its resources and assets to bear on East Cleveland? And this is a rich history here and in this community, and there's dedicated residents, but there's not a commitment on the part of the university. And she was absolutely right. So it took me back to my master's in social work from University of Michigan, and one of my favorite quotes from one of my professors was, how can schools of social work be agents of social change? And so that's been an aspiration of mine. It's driven by my students. And so we said, we're going to do this. And in that process, we decided that we would increase engagement within University Circle and vice versa, getting East Cleveland and University Circle, trying to narrow that gap. We created a tour. We had 50 people loaded on a bus, leaders from across University Circle, and the mayor was new in office. And he gave a challenge that day when we did a tour, and we started at this bridge on Euclid Avenue, and he said, I challenge you to make this a bridge of connection, not a divider between our communities. And that became a very pivotal kind of vision for both the mayor and for us, and said, how do we make this be a form of connection? And just as parenthetically, and we'll get into this later, but our undergraduate first-year students were often told, don't ever go under that bridge because that's East Cleveland. Yeah. And so, you know, think of the message there that's sending about our neighbor. And so that was a challenge for us, and we took it up. So we did this pilot project where we really said, what if we took the next several years, not just do one class, one semester, but said, we're going to involve service learning, we're going to involve building relationships, we're going to find a way to try to connect our school and the resources we have and our faculty and the research dollars, the academic curriculum, the Poverty Center. The Community Poverty Center is a research center at our school that does a lot of work on neighborhoods. And how can we use those resources and assets? And the objective of this kind of enhanced service learning project was really to develop what Mitchell calls authentic relationships with key community stakeholders, with an explicit goal of a long-term, mutually beneficial relationship between the school and the community. And so that was kind of our driving force. We created an aspirational statement, and I would say it's aspirational because I don't think that we've implemented it fully, and I'll say a little bit more about that. And the purpose of the East Cleveland Partnership is to bring together the expertise and assets of University Circle institutions and organizations throughout Greater Cleveland to support the revitalization of East Cleveland through a partnership with the City of East Cleveland, the residents, the nonprofit, business, and faith communities of East Cleveland. Through this partnership, we seek to increase engagement of East Cleveland within University Circle and vice versa in ways that enrich and are beneficial to both communities. And so I think it's aspirational in the sense that we don't have all the institutions involved, and actually, to be honest, Cleveland State University has been as involved as any of the other institutions, with the exception of Neighborhood Connections, which I can talk a little bit about during the discussion. So, so we have a little bit of a video that I think I can show you.